There we go. Welcome. So we seem to be up and rolling now. Apparently I needed some time-saving tips and techniques. Just let me know that you guys are seeing me. Let me know, GMAT Club, let me know that I'm coming through, and then we can just let everybody in so that we're ready for... Okay, perfect. So we'll just get started in just a moment. There we go. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that we had the absolute technology going here. It looked like it was going to be, trying to use the webcam and so forth. And I said, no. I said, we're going to be broadcasting HD with the whiteboard, as we like to do. So this is Veritas Prep, and my name is David Newland, Senior Instructor with Veritas Prep. I've actually been working with the GMAT since 2005, when I wrote most of the chapters of a book called GMAT for Dummies. And 2006 is when I got together with Veritas. At this point, I have taught over 300 courses. Most of them GMAT. I also teach the GRE, and I used to teach the LSAT as well. So this is something that I've truly done for almost 15 years now. And over that time, what I figured out is that there's a time-saving irony. Okay, and so that's what our GMAT strategy seminar is going to be today. The time-saving irony that actually increases the time spent on GMAT questions. And I bet you can think about some things that you were told were going to save you some time on this exam. That you were told maybe never write anything down. Maybe you were told that on sentence correction, the first thing you come to is the decision to make. Maybe you were told some things that aren't even true. You can eliminate all answer choices that do this. Okay? You just have to do this, and you've got the entire question. Well, let me just tell you that if there really was a secret password that would allow you to get all sentence correction questions right of a certain type, the people that write this exam would figure that out, and they would close that loophole. So a lot of these things that you've heard that are maybe too good to be true really are. So let's talk about some time-saving techniques that actually take longer, and let's throw in some time-saving techniques that actually work as well. Now, the GMAT world is full of time-saving tips and techniques, and many of these tips and techniques really do save time. There really are things that you can do that will cut down the time you spend on the quantitative, the time you spend on the verbal. But some of them actually end up taking longer. Now, I just wanted to mention that we almost didn't have this seminar today. This picture right here, you probably can't quite see it, but right here, this is my cat. This is my 21, soon to be 22-year-old cat, okay? And if you know anything about cats, a 21-year-old cat is a really old cat. So as I was preparing a few hours ago, like 2 to 3 hours ago, my cat got out the door. Now, he used to be an outdoor cat, but now that he's 21 years old and hard of hearing and kind of slow, I keep him inside. So he got out, and I was looking for him for about an hour. And then you know what I said? I said, if this is a problem, let's apply the GMAT. So let's think about this. I've got a missing cat. Cat's only about this big. They're silent. My house is surrounded by woods. How am I ever going to find this cat? So I looked in the obvious places for a while, and then I got back to my porch and I said, let's apply the GMAT to this problem like we would any other. And you know what I said? I said, let's look for things that shouldn't be here. Let's look for things that shouldn't be here, and let's use some logic. So the first thing I listened for were birds that were upset, because birds don't like a cat. So I heard a crow that was, yelling at something. So I walked over through the woods about 1/8 of a mile, a couple hundred yards towards that. The cat wasn't there. But then I heard a dog that I've not really heard bark before. And that dog was just barking and barking. And I said, that's a signal word. This is like reading comprehension on the GMAT. I've just come across a signal word that tells me that now I should pay attention. And you know what I did? I walked over to where that dog is in the picture. This is the picture of where the cat was. The dog was right here in a fence, and the cat is sitting there looking at him. My 21-year-old hard of hearing cat was about 1/4 mile from the house. I would have never found him. But I applied the GMAT to that, and the dog found him for me. You got to look for what's not there on what shouldn't be there on this exam. You got to look for what's different. You've got to look for those signal words. And you can take an impossible problem like a tiny cat in a big woods, and you can make it possible. And that's why we're having this seminar today, because otherwise I'd still be out looking for that cat. Let's talk about some time-saving tips and techniques that really do work. And these things that actually save time have a few things in common. What do these techniques have in common that actually save time? Well, number one, they're based on solid foundation of logic, math, or grammar. Not on something that somebody whispered to you, not on wishful thinking, not on wouldn't it be nice, but on solid logic, math, and grammar. Number two, these tips don't make the question easier, they make it simpler. Okay, remember, if you're doing well on this exam, questions aren't going to be easy, but you can make them simpler when you apply the right techniques. And the other thing about techniques that actually do save time is they work 100% of the time when applied correctly. You'll know that you found the right technique when that technique works all the time, okay? Not just some of the time. And I'll give you some examples of ones that work some of the time. It's not a technique if it works some of the time. It's a hope. It's playing the lottery. You don't always win the lottery, right? You probably don't usually win the lottery, but somebody wins the lottery. But that's not a technique, that's a hope. So the following question allows us to demonstrate an example of a technique that really does save time. And this is actually a pretty amazing technique. I can answer the following GMAT question in 1 minute. Can you? Take a look at this. Take a look at this question for 1 minute. "45 seconds. Any answers yet? If you've got an answer, type it in. That's a minute. As soon as I see not only, but also, that's as clear of a signal to me as a dog that won't quit barking that doesn't normally bark, right? That's a clue, right? Something's going on. When I see a not only but also, I know exactly what to do. And I'm going to show you what that is. Because this is actually an amazing time-saving technique because it works 100% of the time and it's based on logic. So take a look. This is called a coordinating conjunction, right? This not only but also. This is a coordinating conjunction. A coordinating conjunction requires parallelism between the elements x and y. In other words, it coordinates two things. So you could say something like, I will either go to the ball game or, go to the park. Something like that, right? I will neither swim nor run. You're going to try to have those things be parallel, and that's what's required. So either or, neither nor, and not only but also are your coordinating conjunctions. So take a look at this one, and we'll see if either one of these things is correct here. So A, he will go either to the movies or the store. B, he will either go to the movies or to the store. Okay, so take a look at that. Any thoughts on this one? Any thoughts on A versus B? In terms of being parallel? What's the logic here? What's even required? What's required to make these elements parallel with the either or, either movies or store? I fool a lot of people with this because I do use this one in class. And I normally get people to answer usually B. Most people say B. Neither of them is correct. Neither one of these is correct. The correct version is he will go to either the movies or the store. And here's why A is wrong and B is wrong and this version is correct. Here's the logic. Remember, if somebody gives you a tip or somebody gives you a technique, please ask them the logic behind it. And if you understand the logic, then you can use the technique. So here's the logic. With a coordinating conjunction, the logic is that anything that comes before the conjunction is shared and does not need to be repeated. And anything that comes after the start of the conjunction needs to be repeated. So what does that mean? Well, let's focus on the words go and to. Let's focus on go and to. And what you'll see is answer choice A, the word go comes before the either, but the word to comes after. And anything that comes after the beginning of the conjunction has to be repeated. So you would need to have the word to over here. You would need to say, he will go either to the movies or to the store. Okay? Look at B. Both go and to are after the conjunction begins. So you would need to have both of those repeated. You would need to say, he will either go to the movies or go to the store. Seems a bit complicated, doesn't it? The correct answer is he will go to. See how both of these things are before? So this version is correct because neither one of these needs to be repeated because they both come before the either. Okay, even if you understand the logic, and I certainly hope you do, I can imagine that this is very difficult for you to apply in the middle of the exam with the clock ticking, right? So let's talk about a time-saving technique that's real. And here's that time-saving technique. This is the logic, but here's the time-saving trick. You simply ignore everything from the beginning of the conjunction to the end of the conjunction. That's it. So I don't have to go back here and go, okay, is the go, is that one shared? Okay, is the to, is that repeated? I don't have to do that for every answer choice. All I have to do for each answer choice is this. I'm going to ignore everything from either to or. And then I'm going to read the sentence. And if it makes sense, then we have the correct parallelism with our conjunction. If it makes sense, we have the parallelism. He will go the store. Right? It's not happening. How about this one? He will to the store. No, still not going to work. But what about the correct answer? He will go to the store. This is an example of a true time-saving technique because you don't have to go through every question and count the goes and count the tos. All you have to do is ignore, and I'm just telling you that there's less for you to read, right? When I tell you to ignore something, what I'm saying is that your job's easier because there's less to focus on. You ignore everything from either to or and read the sentence. Or in the case of this sentence, the one that I put up there, in the case of this sentence, the consequences, and let's just skip the preposition right there. The consequences have been felt in buy local grocery stores. Okay, let's say that again. So the way this sentence is written originally, answer choice A, the consequences have been felt in by local grocery stores. That doesn't, have been felt in by, that doesn't work. So answer choice A is out, right? So that one's out. Well, let's look at the other answers. Let's try this. Okay, so have been felt in by local grocery stores. Okay, B, have been what? By local grocery stores. It's not B. How about C? It just says by local grocery stores. So you have to come back here. So if you look at C, the consequences have by local grocery stores. What? Answer choice D, the consequences have by local grocery stores, the same as C. Answer choice E, the consequences have been felt by local grocery stores. Just like magic, the only possible answer is going to be answer choice E. Just like magic. And here's why. Again, here's the logic. Here's the logic. Have been felt is before the split. Okay? So before we have the conjunction, have been felt. So that doesn't need to be repeated. Now, the word not only in, so in is after. So the preposition is after the conjunction. So we need another preposition on the other side, and that's the word by. So it has been felt in certain places, but also by other places. Okay? The easiest way for you to get the correct answer on a not only but also is this technique. Not only does it save time, but it's going to get you the correct answer more often. And this is another hallmark of a true time-saving technique. It's one that not only has you quicker, but more accurate in your answers as well. Okay, so this is an example of a true time-saving technique. And frankly, the better you can get at sentence correction, eliminating quickly, reading less, the better you're going to be. I was doing some sentence correction with a tutoring student the other day, and we kind of kept going over some sentences a little bit. And, you know, she said, at some point, after you keep reading these things more and more, at some point, what you're going to find is that they all start sounding wrong. Or they all start sounding right. If you keep reading the answer choices over and over and over, you can convince yourself of all kinds of things. But if you have this kind of time-saving technique, then you're going to be, your head's going to be clearer, your choices are going to be better, you're going to be more accurate, and you're going to actually save time. So that's an example of a true time-saving technique. Okay, this technique is based on a solid foundation of logic and, frankly, grammar as well. Makes the question simpler, not easier. People are still going to miss this question, but it's going to be simpler for you and works 100% of the time when applied correctly. Now, before you think, okay, but when does a question like that come up? Grab the official guide, particularly the verbal supplement, and look at the hardest questions. I was working with a tutoring student about a year and a half ago, and we just randomly picked 6 difficult questions to go over together that were at the end of that, I think it was the verbal supplement. And 3 out of those 6 featured this not only but also. It was wild. And we just had to do it. We just had to say, okay, I know this seems like it's almost cheating, but we're just going to try it. And those very difficult questions were answered in less than 1 minute by both of us, by each of us independently. We got the correct answers in less than 1 minute on some questions that otherwise would have been very difficult. That's a true time-saving technique. On the other hand, let's talk about the time-saving tips and techniques in quotes, right? Like when we say friend in quotes, we mean kind of not really. The time-saving tips and techniques that actually increase the time spent per question. And they have these two common facets. So the time-saving techniques that aren't legit, number one, they're based on going faster. Notice that I never said anything on that last question about speeding up. I just said, let's focus on these things and not these things. Okay? A time-saving technique should really be based on what you're going to focus on. It should not be based on looking at everything and doing it faster. Okay? Now, that should be a slide right there. So write it down. Write it down. That should be a slide. A good time-saving technique is based on telling you what to focus on. Because the real way to save time is to not focus on everything, but to focus on some things, the important things. Okay? Don't focus on the not only, but also, and what's in between. Focus on what's around it, because that's what's important. Something that tells you that you should look at everything, but do it faster, is not a true time-saving technique. Anybody who says, read the entire reading comp passage, but do it faster, skim that reading comp passage, that is not a true time-saving technique. If skimming were really the way to go, the people that write this exam would find a way to make that not applicable anymore. Okay? I was, when I was a bit younger, I went to Las Vegas with some money and spent a couple of weeks playing blackjack. I guess you could call it semi-professionally. I made a little bit of money. And there was a guy sitting there next to me who had this sheet of paper, and it had different amounts to bet on it. And the casino worker came over and said, you know, what's on that paper? Because, you know, a little bit concerned, like, what's this guy doing? It just told him how to double his bet every time. Okay? But the thing is, doubling your bet every time is based on the idea that you'll never lose 5 or 6 hands of blackjack in a row. And it happens a lot. So the casino worker just looked at that and said, hey, you know what? That's fine. You go ahead and do that. Okay? Because you're just going to lose. You go ahead and do that. That's what the people that write this exam say. If you say, I'm going to skim that reading comp passage, I'm going to read that whole passage in 90 seconds. They don't say, oh no, you know, she's just figured out the key to the whole thing. The GMAT has just been, you know, broken, right? The GMAT's has just been figured out. They say, go ahead, and they sort of chuckle the way the casino worker chuckled, because he knew that guy was going to keep losing the money. Okay? So skimming is not a way to win. It's just a way to lose quicker. Not writing things down. Ooh, that's also faster. I'll go through the entire exam. I won't write anything down, right? I'll do all that math in my head. I'll never write anything down for reading comprehension. I'll never write anything down for critical reasoning. I'll never write anything down for data sufficiency. I'll save a bunch of time that way. Not in the least. It will actually take you more time. So things that are based on going faster, okay? Nobody has ever won by being in a hurry. They are based on wishful thinking. Here we go. So the other aspect of these time-saving techniques that actually increase the amount of time or make you less accurate, they're based on wishful thinking, and they claim to make the question easier. And we'll look at a couple of examples of both of these things. So we're going to look at examples of trying to go faster. So number one, tips and techniques that are based on going faster. These are based in fear. It's the fear of running out of time. It's never good to base your GMAT strategy on fear. Can you think of some techniques people use in a desperate attempt to save time? I think I've mentioned a couple of them already. Some desperate attempts to save time. Maybe you resort to some of these. I'm not talking about what I call problem-solving karate. Problem-solving karate is another legitimate technique if you're out of time. Basically what you're doing is you're very quickly looking at the answer choices and seeing if there's any big differences in them. so that some answer choices might be impossible. If you just give me 30 seconds, I will quickly look at those answer choices to see if some of them are odd and some of them are even, and maybe the answer choice has to be one or the other. Maybe the answer has to be negative and some of the choices are positive. Maybe it has to be a fraction and some are integers. Maybe some answer choices are really small and some are really big, and we can decide about that. That is a true technique if you're out of time, okay, to try to look for impossible answers. But you shouldn't be doing things like that unless you're actually out of time. This should not be your strategy. This should be a once in a while sort of thing. Hey, I've only got a few seconds on this question. Let me see what I can do. Normally, you calmly get the question right. Here's some attempts to save time, some desperate attempts. Skimming the passage or the prompts, like a critical reasoning or a word problem. Jumping at the first decision point on sentence correction. You understand that the people that write this exam know about these things, right? You understand that. They listen, they hear, they look at the, they look at GMAT Club, every once in a while to make sure that, look, GMAT Club does a great job of helping people legitimately learn how to attack these questions, right? But what if the GMAT Club figured out the key to the whole thing? You type in these, 7 letters in a row and you get an 800, They monitor these things to make sure that somebody hasn't actually figured out the keys to the kingdom. Well, if jumping at the first decision point on sentence correction was really the great way to save all this time and make this happen, the people that write this exam would figure that out. And guess what? They have figured that out. So what do? They put fake, what I call decision points. Other people call them splits, right? So an answer choice will have, has done versus have done, right? He has done well, they have done well, right? That's a split. That's a legitimate split. But you know what they often put at the beginning of sentence correction, that first decision point? They often put a split, or what I call a decision point, where they both could be right or they both could be wrong. I've had this on an actual question before. This was the first decision point. This was the first split. Probably versus maybe. Probably versus maybe. That was my first decision point. Probably versus maybe. Do you think I jumped on that? Do you think I said, oh yeah, probably versus maybe? That's the clearest decision point I've ever seen. Let me do that. Those two words are very similar. If I was to ask you, are you going to study today? And you said probably, or you said maybe, those are both logical, right? So this is like the last decision point you want to do. So please understand that if you think you figured out something that the people that write the exam don't know about, or that they're, they don't know I'm going to do the first decision point. Of course they know. And they're waiting for you. And now if you've taken this decision point, now you've maybe gotten rid of the right answer. And you know what takes a long time on sentence correction? Debating 2 or 3 wrong answers. You want to spend 3 or 4 minutes on sentence correction. Eliminate the correct answer early on and debate between 2 or 3 wrong answers, trying to decide which one of them is least worst. Okay? So don't jump at that first decision point on sentence correction. That's not a time saver, right? That's not a time saver. Don't jump at the first decision point. Go until you find a good decision point. This is not a way to save time. Making equations before reading the question. How many people have I worked with that I've had to stop them because they figure that reading the entire question takes too much time? They get so excited. There are some people that I've even told, and maybe this is you, this could be a technique for you. If the question is longer than 1 line of type, there are some students that I've worked one-on-one with, tutoring students, that I've told them, you have to go to the question mark first. You must write down what the question is asking first. Because people start making equations before they read the question, and you know what happens? They didn't need those equations. Or they set up the equations to answer the wrong variable, or something that ends up taking more time. Okay? There's actually a couple of drills, and maybe you'd like to think about doing these drills as well. I do these drills with problem solving. When I have students who either stick with a question too long or get started on a question too quickly, the same drill helps them out with both. What I have them do is 10 official questions in a row. It helps if you have them on paper or at least a PDF. At least the PDF, but paper usually the best. I have them do 10 questions, and they get 1 minute. And the first minute is spent not solving, but just diagnosing, just deciding how to solve. Okay? So just diagnosing. I'll talk about that reading comp in just a minute. Akshat, I'll talk about that in just a moment. So if you want to try these drills, take 1 minute to diagnose, to decide what to do on the problem. But you have to take the full minute. Okay, so listen, let's say you're doing problems, 198 to 208, so 207. So 10 problems in the book, 198 to 207. You're going to go through each of those. You're going to get 1 minute on 198, 1 minute on 199, 1 minute on 200, but you have to take the full minute. Now, I never thought about this part of it when I assigned it. The reason why I came up with this drill is so people would know when to stop and guess on a question. Because some people take 5 minutes on a question, they don't realize they've done it. So if I have you take 1 minute to figure out how to do the question, you'll know when you don't know how to do the question. And then you'll know, okay, this is one to move on from. But what students have told me is that by taking that 1 minute, that entire minute, before they start that math question, that problem-solving question, they realize that they normally start the question after 20 seconds and they don't do the efficient way. Right? So a time-saving technique is to not start the math until you've looked at the question, until you understand what's going on the question. I will often start a data sufficiency or a problem-solving question very slowly. Okay? If you were working with me one-on-one, you'd be like, David, it's been a minute and you just appear to be kind of playing with some numbers. And then suddenly I will go, if X is positive, it has to be greater than Y, otherwise they're both 0. And then there's the answer. You start slowly, you figure out what's going on, then you make it happen. That's the way to actually save time. So making equations before reading the question is not a time-saving technique. Too much mental math. Do you know how this can waste time? Remember, we're talking right now about time-saving techniques that actually take longer. If you do the math mentally and you don't write it down, and your answer is not one of the choices, you don't know where you made the mistake, right? This is why accountants put the numbers there. You know, they don't just do the math on the calculator and then erase it all. They put the numbers down so we can figure out where the mistake is. You can very quickly figure out where you made the math mistake if you've written the math down. If you've done the mental math, now you're doing everything all over again. And then not writing things down on quantitative, like if they tell you something's an integer and you don't write that down, and it's like data sufficiency, now you've got yourself kind of in a mess, and maybe later on you figure out that it was, in fact, an integer. Not writing things down on the verbal section. People think they're saving time. But if they don't understand the reading comp passage and they can't go back to it quickly, they didn't save any time by not writing things down. Acting out of fear actually slows you down. This happens in athletics all the time. Think about the runner who starts too fast and ends up with a slower time. Think about the basketball player who rushes the shot for fear of not having enough time on the clock and then does what? Drops the ball, misses the shot, you know? In some way, it always ends up taking longer when you're in a hurry. I remember the first time I was watching Usain Bolt run the 100 meters in the Olympics. And they said the way that he does it is he's not in a hurry. Because as soon as a sprinter tries, they tighten up, right? They tighten up and they actually slow down. As soon as you try to go faster in running, that's when you slow down. And that's kind of what happens here as well. So a real time-saving irony is this classic time saver that costs you more time, and that's skimming. When people skim anything, reading passage, word problem, critical reasoning prompt, sentence correction, they usually end up taking more time, okay? So we want to talk about improving accuracy in a reading passage. Read the passage to understand, and I'll talk to you about what I mean by that. Not skimming. That's certainly true. Skimming is not based on logical or mathematical concept. It's based on the idea that the specific words don't really matter. When you're skimming something, what you're saying is the actual words don't really matter. Only the general idea of what's being said. Nothing could be further from the truth. This exam is all about the individual words, not only a particular sentence correction word, but that's often the key to critical reasoning. If you go back to the passage on reading comprehension, how do you want to improve your accuracy? Look at the specific words, okay? Look at the words in the question. Make sure that you're absolutely understanding what's going on. Take word problems. Every word matters in word problems. How about words like even? Or they tell you that 3 machines were doing something. Can you imagine you just quickly skim over a word problem and you don't write down that it's 3 machines, but you think it's 1, and you go through and do all the math? Your answer's not going to be there unless the trap is there, right? The only way that it doesn't cost you more time when you don't write down that it's 3 machines is if they've got a trap set for you and you get the question wrong. So it's either going to cost you time or a wrong answer or both. What about this official question? Look at this one. Anybody remember this one? This is from the quantitative supplement. To me, this is just a classic question. Running at their respective constant rates, machine X takes 2 days longer to produce W widgets than machine Y. At these rates, if the 2 machines together produce 5 over 4 W widgets in 3 days, how many days would it take machine X alone to produce 2 W widgets? Wow. That is crazy, right? There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of detail. Do you know how a bunch of people miss this question? Look what you're solving for. W widgets, right? W widgets. What's the question asking? 2 W widgets. Either the answer's not going to be there, like if the correct answer is 10, you're going to come up with 5 because you're solving for W, and your answer's not there. Or if the correct answer is 12, you're going to come up with 6. Or if the correct answer is 8, you're going to come up with 4. And you're just going to miss the question. You have to read carefully, not only on these word problems to get the equations set up, to get the math set up, but this little bit right here, not answering W, but answering 2W, I'm going to tell you right now, they increased the difficulty on this question from like a 70th to like a 90th percentile, just by giving everybody that one extra way to get this question wrong. So the minute that you decide, okay, I'm going to go fast, that's the minute that I'm going to not bet on your score. Okay? You go fast by focusing on the right things. You don't go fast by trying to go fast. This question is not only a caution against skimming, but an example of why it's not a time-saving technique to save time by not writing down the actual question. So always write down what the question's asking. Data sufficiency, problem solving, always. Skimming on a critical reasoning question and moving quickly to the answer choices. This is another one. You guys have heard this. I'm going to get right to the answer choices. Let me just think about this for a second. On a critical reasoning question, like a strengthen, weaken, assumption, whatever, you have 4 wrong answers. Lies. 4 lies. Okay? 4 wrong answers. Only 1 right answer. But the question stem is right. It's factual. The stimulus is factual. So why would you spend all of your time with 4 wrong answers rather than spending that time with a factual stimulus and a factual question stem so that you're ready to identify the correct answer? Let me ask you what's going to take more time. If you go to an art gallery and you would like to get a new painting, and there's 5 paintings there, which is going to take more time? Going to each of those 5 paintings and comparing it and thinking about it and trying to figure out if it's going to work in, in the room you want to put it in, or having a little picture of the painting you want and simply comparing it. Right? This is what happens when I do a critical reasoning question. By the time I get to the answer choices, I know what I'm looking for, and I just compare that, right? I just compare that. So, Jadeep, how much time do you think to spend on 5 answer choices versus time on the question stem? Ideally, almost no time on the 5 answer choices. Seriously. I can get through the 5 answer choices, and again, I've been at this for 14 years. I always get a perfect score on the verbal section of the GMAT. I have a perfect 170 on the GRE. I almost got the perfect LSAT score, but I messed up one of the games. So, I don't miss critical reasoning questions. Yeah, the last time I took the exam, Jadeep, I got a 51. I didn't miss a question, right? So 46 is already the 99th percentile. So I got a 51. I didn't miss a question. I had 15 minutes to spare, and I took mental notes so that I could tell my classes, like, did I see a lot of strengthened questions or weakened questions, or what did I see? Okay, what did I see in sentence correction? Nothing that would get me in trouble, but just like general ideas. So yeah, I was 100% confident on every question. I didn't miss one. I had 15 minutes to spare, and I took notes. And frankly, I was ready for some more questions. Okay, so if you want time-saving techniques on critical reasoning, here's your time-saving technique. Don't go to the answer choices in most cases until you know what you're looking for. So let me give you an example on just a quick question. So the best way to do critical reasoning is to take your time as you read the stimulus, even pausing between sentences. Again, if you're in a tutoring session with me, I will go like skimming on a critical reasoning question. I'll like read the sentence and I'll stop for a second and I'll go, okay, so they're telling me not to skim on a critical reasoning question. Then I'll go to the next sentence and I'll put that together. And then I'll just say, oh, well, the answer has to be this. And boom, pick out the answer. So I'll spend 10 seconds on the answer choices. On the exam day, I'll spend 20, just to be sure. On exam day, I'll just be real careful to make sure I don't get tricked. But 20 seconds. When you move to the answer choices, you have a great idea of what the answer must say or do. Take this example. So take a look at this example. So read this one. This is a weakened question. We're going to undermine the conclusion. Just read this one, and then I'll ask you a question about it. It's not pre-thinking on critical reasoning. It's not pre-thinking. I know what you're talking about. People think that they can predict the answer choice. I don't try to predict word for word what the answer choice is going to say. That's not what I do. I understand what the gap in the logic is. I understand what the conclusion and the evidence is. I know I need to put them together or bring them apart. And I especially, listen to this, Jadeep, I talk about where the question has taken me and where it wants to go. Okay? So here's just a quick example. What if I said, let me see if I can get Oh, well, I'll just use this one. So what if I said that all females play tennis? All females play tennis. And I said Mary is female. Okay, those are my premises, right? So you know where you've gotten to. If all females play tennis and Mary plays female, Mary is female, you know where we've gotten to. Mary plays tennis, right? That's never what they're going to say, though. Because how could you strengthen that? How could you weaken that? 2 + 2 = 4, you can't strengthen 2 + 2 = 4. It just does, right? So if I have this and this, they give me this conclusion. Watch. Mary plays only tennis. Well, now you've got the entire, I mean, this is simpler than an official question, of course. I mean, as an example, it's of course simpler. But now you know the whole thing. Only. Mary plays only tennis, not cricket. Okay? Not badminton. Badminton's like tennis, right? No badminton, nothing else. She only plays tennis. Where did that come from? And now we know when we go to the answer choice, I'm not going to predict what it says, but I'm going to say this. It all centers on the word only. How do I get from Mary plays tennis, which we know, to Mary plays only tennis, which we hope for, right? So how do we get there? So on this question, there's a word on this question that they didn't have to say. I can tell you what the correct answer to this question will be, and again, not pre-thinking, but just, I know what it's got to do. Before the choices are even revealed. By reading carefully and not skimming, I picked out the most important word in the entire stimulus. Do you see that word? It's the word they didn't have to say. Did anybody pick up on a word that they didn't have to say here? We'll probably be another 15 minutes because we did start about 10 minutes late. So we got probably about 15 minutes or so. Maybe a little bit less, but about that much time. The word is reported. The word is reported. Look at this. This first part, and by the way, for critical reasoning, you've got to differentiate between background and evidence and conclusion. This is background. This is all background. You can tell it's going to be background based on two things. Number one, they tell you that environmental groups are doing something. Okay, well that means it's probably not the author. It's not the conclusion, right? It's somebody else, environmental groups. And then you see this negation, which is the word but. So now we know, okay, whatever we just said doesn't really matter. We're doing the opposite. Okay? So environmental groups don't like this way of getting, of mining, right? Environmental groups don't like the mining. That's all you got to get from that. But now you see, as mining companies are quick to retort, the countries already using this technique have not reported any. So here's what goes on in my mind. I am thinking that they're going to use the word had. I'm thinking they're going to say, the countries using this technique have not had any groundwater contamination, because that's what is logical there. But instead, they say reported. And that's like the difference between Mary plays tennis and Mary plays only tennis. Okay? Meaning they haven't seen the effects yet. Could already using be so I think I think you might be in trouble there. Because one of the answer choices is A. Tell me you might be in a little bit of trouble if you're looking for already using. Some of the countries currently using the technique have only been doing so for 2 years or less. That's not the answer. That's a trap answer. Okay? And here's why this would not be a very good strengthen or weaken answer. How about the word some? What does some mean? It doesn't have much meaning, you know? Could be 1, could be 2, could be a million. So answer choice A has some weaknesses. Already using this technique, I think is not as important as reported, because the countries not using it can't have had any effects. You see what I mean? You have to have been already using it. So I think that's more logical. Reported is like, if you're in a job interview and you ask the person interviewing, hey, has your company had any discrimination or harassment claims? And the person goes, none that we've reported. Right? We haven't reported any. Not only does that make me think that they've had some discrimination or harassment, but it makes me think that they're hiding something. That word right there makes me think these guys are hiding something. And the correct answer here is answer choice C, by the way. The countries currently using the technique are so dependent on oil revenue that they're unlikely to report any problems that might require them to stop. So that's exactly focused on the word reporting. I didn't know this was going to be the wording. When I say that I know what the answer is going to be, like I know it in my person, that it's got to be something about the fact that they haven't reported it. I'm not willing to write out for you exactly what the words are going to be. I'm not going to predict that. That's a mistake, because then you're going to miss the correct answer. Okay, so in this case, we have this one. Skimming on reading comprehension is not really any better. You read the passage to understand what you're reading. So let's talk about reading comprehension. You read the passage to understand what you're reading, not to make it to the bottom of the page. Okay? If you think that your goal is for your eyeballs to travel from the top line to the bottom line, then you've missed this. I had a GRE student who just turned around her entire reading comprehension because I told her you read to understand. And somehow that clicked. Maybe that'll click for you as well. When I read the passage, I take my time. But then I answer the questions in like under 1 minute each. Instead of skimming, here are some more effective techniques for reading comp. You guys wanted some tips for reading comp. Number 1, when reading, pay particular attention when you see any signal words. So you're not skimming on reading comp, but you can read at like 2 different speeds. You can read at a normal speed, which for me is not going to be fast. It's going to be normal, right? The way I paid attention to the signal that the barking dog was giving me this morning, right? I'm back to the dog again. I'm just kind of pleased that I found the cat. I don't know if you guys can tell. It's like a GMAT problem and I got it right. So when I see conclusion words, I'm going to read really carefully. Therefore, consequently, I'm going to read carefully. When I see transition words, but, however, something's happening here. When I see list words like secondly, thirdly, finally, or premise words like because or since, any of these signal words, I could go through with you an entire reading comp passage. You could show me an official reading comp passage. Now, we don't have time for that today, so you're going to have to do this for yourself. Go through an official reading comp passage. And now I do want you to skim. Okay? Just for this one moment, I do want you to skim. I just want you looking for signal words. Okay? And I want you to sign them, circle them. If you've got like a paper book, or write them down. Look for signal words. Circle them, write them down, and you know what you're going to find? Go back and read that passage. The really good stuff, it's going to be right around there. So you can absolutely read at 2 different speeds. You can pay a little less attention to things like lists of examples. So if they say something like, and this program has helped thousands of students, such as 2 different people that live in, that's where you can come back if you need to. That's where I'm actually going to speed up. If they start giving me like a list of examples, that's where I'm going to speed up. I need to understand what's happening. And if I need those details of like what the kids were doing here, or, what this particular person was doing there. Now, if they're starting to talk about like different theories, that's not the same thing. I'm talking about like a list of examples. You can go a little quicker. Secondly, find a way to get engaged with the passage. So when you're reading the passage, you need to stop at the end of each paragraph. Stop at the end of each paragraph. Or if it's a big paragraph, cut that paragraph in half to make sure you understand, and also to go back into the passage. If you stop after each paragraph, you definitely will get yourself back into the passage more quickly, right? Let me just stop for a second real quick. So Ahmad Shah says, hey, reading the answer choices is going to take time. We need to factor this into the time to answer, okay? You have to be, if there's one thing you have to be efficient with, it's answer choices. If you think about it, if you have 36, questions, you have 36 times 5 answer choices. If you have one reading comprehension passage with 4 questions, you have 20 answer choices. Where do you want to be efficient? One passage or 20 answer choices? That's where you need to be efficient. And that's where Ahmad Shah, if you go back to the question, to the passage to answer the question, it's usually much more effective. Reading comprehension, you should not be doing process of elimination unless the passage just doesn't allow you to go back, okay? You should really do 2 things on reading comprehension. You either know the answer in your own words immediately, okay? Let me see. The women, their strike was not successful. I know this because they didn't have the money to wait it out, okay? Okay, go look for the answer choices. Absolutely. If you know the answer in your own words when you read it, and oftentimes I do because I read the passage and I really understand it, okay? If you do understand it, okay, then what you're going to do is, you're going to go back to you're going to just go right to the answer choices. But if you don't know the answer in your own words, go back to the passage and you will know what the correct answer should be. So that's how you're efficient with answer choices. You go to the passage or you go to your brain and you know the answer. Sometimes the answer choices are worded so closely that it looks like the reported critical reasoning question. Okay, I see what you're saying. So sometimes the answer choices are worded more closely like this. Okay? Well, I got to tell you, you could know just as well on a reading comp that you're looking for, even more so, because with reading comp, it's on the paper or on the screen. You can look back at the passage. Ahmad Shah, you should know when you go to the answer choices what you're looking for 3/4 of the time. So if I know I'm looking for reported, look, watch this. Some of the countries have not been, what does that got to do with reported? Other widely used techniques, what's that got to do with reported? The countries currently using are so dependent on oil revenue, they're unlikely to report. Aha. In the years that has been in use, several safeguards. Does that tell me why they haven't reported? Because they've added new safeguards? That makes no sense. All of the aquifers would be employed, are used to provide drinking water. That doesn't tell me why they haven't reported the problems. This just makes it worse. It doesn't explain it. So you have to be efficient by being brutal with those answer choices, okay? You are gentle with the passage, with the paragraph for critical reasoning. You take your time understanding. And once you understand, the answer choices are done. That's how you do it, okay? I even have this drill for critical reasoning. You might try it, okay? I underline the correct answer and I don't read the rest of them. You want to get good at being able to predict. You want to be able to get to be good at being able to not predict, but being able to understand what the answer should be rather than process of elimination, right? No, Jadeep, no. With sentence correction, you do not. No. With sentence correction, you always read all 5. Sentence correction is a process of elimination. Okay. So also find a way to get engaged with the reading comp passage. So make a prediction that you could be right or wrong about. Like, some passages are not interesting to you. Make them interesting. So you get to the end of the first paragraph and the author's been talking about two different works. You say, aha, the next paragraph is going to tell me which of those works is better. It doesn't matter if you're right. All you're trying to do is engage a different part of your brain. And you engage a different part of your brain by making the passage have something to do with you. Okay? That's what we're doing here. So make a prediction, because now it's got to do with you. Have a reaction. I didn't know that. It doesn't matter. Just take 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Have a reaction, because it engages different areas of your brain when it matters to you. And my favorite is this one. Tie this passage to prior knowledge. This is what I always do. There's never been a reading comprehension passage that I couldn't convince myself was interesting because it had something to do with something that I knew something about. Okay? And I've always just thought reading comprehension was like easy for me. But now what I understand is that I am always there. I'm always engaged in the passage. Not because I'm smarter than you, or they've installed a chip or something like that. They haven't, as far as I know. I have gotten the vaccine, so they may have given me a chip that way. I don't know. But the difference between what's happening here is I'm always engaged in that passage. I'm always there. I'm always interested. And it's probably for this reason, because I tie it back. Number 3, know how to return to the passage efficiently. Okay? My Wi-Fi's improved, yeah. Know how to return to the passage efficiently. This is the key to timing on reading comprehension. Saving a minute or two on the reading of the passage does you no good if it takes you 2 minutes to answer. So again, this is not a time-saving technique to try to save time on the passage if it costs you time on 4 questions that you have to then answer. Even skimming a sentence correction can be a bad idea. Since so much of sentence correction has to do with logic, it's important to understand the logical meaning of the sentence. Number 2. So that was only number 1. So the number 1 type of questions that tips that are false are based on fear, right? You try to go faster. The number 2 type, tips and techniques, are based on wishful thinking, right? They claim to make the question easier. Wishful thinking. There's a concept called wish cycling. Do you guys know about this with recycling? This is the attempt to recycle materials that cannot actually be recycled because it feels better and the person hopes or wishes the items will actually be recycled. So, here are some commonly wish cycled. None of these items can actually be recycled. And it's actually a very bad idea that people throw them in there. Plastic bags, hoses, hangers, like Christmas lights, straws and utensils, coffee cups. No matter how right it feels to recycle these things, adding these and similar items to the recycling actually slows down the process and limits what does get recycled. Wish cycling is a lot like the GMAT version of wish cycling. Has anyone ever given you a tip that would be really nice if it were true? Tips that you wish were true? Tips that you just wish were true? I'm going to give you 2 of them. And they actually have to do, both of them, with sentence correction. For some reason, sentence correction is the wish capital of the GMAT. Sentence correction has a couple. How about this? A, any answer choice with the word be or being is automatically wrong. Okay? If that were true, the people that write the exam would know and they would do something about it. And guess what? They have. They're ready to trap you. And then number 2, and this is one that still plagues people. Any answer choice that changes the, quote, original meaning of the sentence, the meaning in choice A, is wrong. I've been fighting this battle for over 10 years. There is no original meaning of any sentence. Okay, let's take a look at both of these. A, any answer choice with the word be or being is automatically wrong. I won't say try this GMAT question. We're just going to look at it. You've probably seen this one already. You've probably already seen this one. So here are the 5 answer choices. They're pretty crazy here. They're long. You really wish there was a way to eliminate a couple of answer choices, right? Because each one of these, like the whole sentence is underlined. Look at this. Each answer choice is an entire sentence. Can't I just eliminate answer choice E, please? Can I not just eliminate answer choice E with the word being right there? Can I please not just eliminate it? Guess what? Correct answer to that question is E. Being heavily committed to a course of action, especially one that has worked well in the past, is likely to make an executive miss signs of incipient trouble or misinterpret them when they do appear. This is the correct answer to this question. Okay? Now, Jadeep says, when can you use being? Okay? When you're just talking about the state of something. So if you could replace being with as, it's probably good to go. As a. Heavily committed. Sorry, in this case, as doesn't work, but in cases like this, being a GMAT student, okay? So as a GMAT student. So in my example, it worked. So being a GMAT student gives you the state of things. You're a GMAT student, right? Being heavily committed just gives you the state of things. The word as doesn't work, but it's the same thing. When the word be doesn't work is when you can replace it with were, okay? Or you can replace it with another verb. So to be or being does work sometimes when it's just giving you the state of things. When it doesn't work is when you can replace it like the word were. Can being ever be accurate in the form of a verb? I think it can, yes. So this is an example of something that is not a true tip or technique. Okay? Look, there's the word be. Can it ever be? Look, Jadeep, you just used be, right? Can it ever be correct? Sure, it can ever be correct, right? So it can be. You can't eliminate. It's not something you can just eliminate. You have to figure it out. What about this changing the meaning thing? Here's an example of a question where the correct answer, quote, changes the meaning. Take a look at this. Published since 1851, the founders of the New York Times were Henry Jarvis Raymond and George Jones, who had no previous journalism experience. Okay? Previous journalism experience. So when you see this, it appears that Henry Jarvis Raymond and George Jones had no previous journalism experience. Okay? Look at answer choice C. Published since 1851, the New York Times was founded by George Jones, who had no previous journalism experience, and Henry Jarvis Raymond. So wait a second. Now we only have George Jones with no journalism experience. Didn't that change the meaning? Well, the correct answer to this question is C. The other answers are wrong for reasons such as, if you look at answer choice A, published since 1851 does not modify the founders. Look, answer choice E, Jadeep. The founders being, okay, you can replace this with the word were, so that is wrong. So this is an example where being is wrong. The founders were Henry Jarvis Raymond and George Jones. So we just got an example where being is actually wrong on this particular one, but it's wrong for a reason. It's wrong for a logical, grammatical reason, not just because we wish it was wrong. Okay? And so in this case, it looks like we changed the meaning from two people with no experience to one. But guess what? There is no original meaning of the sentence. There's only what is logical and what is not logical. Answer choice D was wrong based on the verb right here. And published. This should have said and has been published since 1851. This should say has been. It's the wrong verb tense. Has been published. So the verb tense doesn't match up. A few years ago, I went through all of the original guide sentence correction questions. I just had some time on my hands, looking for an instance of any answer choice being eliminated because it changed the meaning. There was not one single instance of this. Instead, many answers were wrong because of an illogical meaning. And check this out. Perhaps ironically, the answer choice that was eliminated for the illogical meaning the most was choice A. Answer choice A is the most likely to have the wrong meaning. Okay? And it's not wrong because of something like two people versus one. It's wrong because it's illogical. What if I said to you that my coffee mug has no experience in journalism? That's illogical. Okay? Saying two people had no experience versus one person, that's not logic. So don't worry about it. There is no original meaning. So these are two examples. Always get rid of to be or being. The original meaning changes. Those are wishful thinking. That's wishful thinking. Okay? In sentence correction, when you've eliminated the correct answer, you may spend plenty of valuable time debating 2 or 3 incorrect answers. When somebody gives you a too good to be true time-saving tip, make sure it's reality and not just a wish. Okay? And that's how we're going to wrap this one. Beware of the time-saving tips and techniques that actually increase the time spent per question. They have these common facets. They're based on going faster. They're based on wishful thinking and claim to make the question easier. It may feel like you're saving time when you skim, jump at the first, start before you read the question, do too much math, or not write things down, but in reality, you'll only miss questions and take longer in doing it. The time-saving irony that actually increases the time spent on GMAT questions. All right, guys, that was like an hour and 15 minutes. So, is there a session on understanding the logical meaning in sentence correction? As I go into grammar rules way too quickly, preferably by you. There is a, Jadeep, just look up the 10 toughest sentence correction. Okay, look up that one. I did that session some months ago with GMAT Club. So look for that one, and that'll give you some idea of looking into the logical meaning. 10 toughest sentence correction. Okay, so thanks everybody, and it's all's well that ends well with the cat. So that ended up well too. Hopefully you guys will do just as well on the GMAT. Look for those signals, and look for the things we talked about today, and don't get stuck with any time-saving ironies. Okay. All right, so let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you on the next session. And go to veritasprep.com, and you can see when you have some trial classes coming up. You can sign up for, listen to this now, the first session of any of the Veritas GMAT courses. You can attend the entire first session. So go to veritasprep.com, find that one out, okay? And I have a class starting in a few weeks. Come to the first session. Okay? Thanks. Ayush says, reading takes a lot of time for me. How to improve my speed, still have good enough comprehension. Right. So, Ayush, you have to, if it's about the English, you may have to do more reading. Okay? That may have to be. But if it's not about that, then the problem is focusing too much on the difficult nouns, okay? This is what happens to people. When you focus on the nouns in reading comprehension, that's where you take too long, and that's where you don't understand. What you want to focus on is the action. Reading comprehension is like a movie. When you get done with a reading comprehension passage, you should be able to tell somebody what the action was, okay? Oh yeah, man, listen, so there's 2 types of oxygen. So, I don't know, one of them's heavier than the other one. And so they get the seashells off of the the bottom of the ocean, and they can tell what type of oxygen was in the air, and they know whether it was an ice age or not. Isn't that wild? Okay? That's how you describe a passage. You see how I focused on the action. I didn't talk about, oxygen isotope 18 and calcium carbonate, and I didn't get into it. You got to find a way to read as if you were going to summarize it to your friend, okay? The way that you would talk to your friend about having watched a movie. So that's how you can get better at both comprehension and speed. Don't get caught up in the science words. Don't get caught up in the big words. Make it into a story, okay? Maybe I'll do reading comprehension next. I did the 10 toughest sentence correction. I did the 10 toughest critical reasoning. You guys can look those up. Those were my last 2 GMAT clubs. Maybe we'll do reading comp next. Thanks, everybody.